don't be fooled, this map is showing a whole lot more than just elevation of different countries. We're looking at the amount of meters on average these nations are above sea level. There's actually a much bigger hidden secret on this map. There's a really big theme you can find in all of these nations that are highlighted, specifically in the places like China, Afghanistan, Iran, and that is that many of these countries were never fully conquered. Maybe for a brief time in their history, but not long term. A lot of these nations are infamous historically for being extremely difficult to conquer. And remember, when it comes to a lot of these places that avoided being conquered, for a lot of their history, it was a perfect combination of it being too difficult to conquer them, but also them playing very good diplomatically. For example, we have the famous and neutral Switzerland. Not only are they very high on average above sea level, but for the last like 200 years, they haven't been conquered. They might have had brief moments of being occupied, but this did not last. A perfect example of what I'm talking about, go back to the World War II days. There's a few reasons why the Swiss were able to survive, literally surrounded on all sides by the Axis. Not only were there diplomatic reasons, but also it was just not worth it. The Austrian painter knew it was just going to be too difficult for very little payoff. Could the Germans at that time conquered it? Yeah, probably, but it would have been so annoying. The Swiss were ready to make their country look like Afghanistan in Europe. Conquering the Swiss Alps would have been such a pain in the ass. Another famous place being very difficult to conquer on that time, Ethiopia. Just ask the Italians, it was not a very fun time. Then you got a massive nation like China. Of course, the flat part of China is easy, but there's a reason why the Japanese Empire in World War II weren't able to get much further than just the coast. They weren't able to get that far inland. Imagine having to fight here in the Tibetan Plateau. That would have been insane. Like I said at the very beginning, there might have been a brief moment where these countries were occupied, but to be able to hold this stuff, that was the difficult part. Fun fact, no matter where you are in Switzerland, you're always higher up than literally anywhere in Denmark. Not true. I'm in Denmark standing on a ladder as we speak. Taiwan, being an island, is very surprising to see on this list. I gotta think that's helped contribute to why Taiwan is still around independent and why the Chinese haven't gone in and tried to take back this island, even though they've wanted it for like 7+ decades now. Never knew Mongolia being at an altitude this high. Part of the reason why it's so cold, yeah, their capital is one of the coldest in the world. We didn't even get to talk about the Mongolian Empire. You've never been to Amsterdam? I've never been higher than there. Are you saying what I think you're saying? The most extreme countries? They're so bipolar, they're hot and cold. These places have at least one recorded temperature above 48 degrees Celsius. That's 118 Fahrenheit. Or for the light blue countries, these are places that have recorded negative 48 degrees Celsius. Oh my goodness, that's negative 54 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's start off with the hot places. Not surprising to see this in Mexico. It might come from the Mexican state of Sonora. Yes, it happened back in 1995. These numbers are out of control. Then you have every country located with the Sahara Desert or the world's biggest desert, even countries that are just near the Sahara Desert. Every single Middle Eastern country has had a temperature over 48 degrees Celsius. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but literally all of them? This record extends all the way to Central Asia. So you'll notice this theme here with a lot of these hot places. You just kind of need a giant desert, which that's literally all Australia is. Because to make this list, all you needed was one day in one place to have been extremely hot. I think the most shocking one on the list is Argentina, but they also have a very giant desert down here. We just don't talk about it too often. This is the Patagonian Desert. This is actually the 8th largest desert in the world. You wouldn't think it would get that hot down south, so close to Antarctica, by the way, but there's a whole bunch of geographical reasons for that. Then we got the extremely cold places like Greenland, the Nordics, except for Denmark, and the only place in this part of Europe is Austria, not Switzerland though. Of course Russia, of course Mongolia, and then I like how Central Asia is very split. Talk about one of the most extreme places on Earth. Finally, the last category that I didn't talk about, these countries have had both. That's literally mind-blowing. They have recorded both a temperature above and below these degrees. You'll notice obviously a pretty big theme with the both category. They are very large nations like China and India, also typically located in the center of the globe, not too close to the poles. Really shocked to see Canada though. How did Canada, I know how they got the cold category, but how did they get the hot one? I actually don't even believe that Canada at one point got to 118 degrees Fahrenheit, but apparently it did back in 2021 in British Columbia. That I feel really says a lot about the current climate situation going on that Canada got this hot. Finally, the only other country that really shocks me is Italy. Again, you notice a theme that a lot of these places are really big, or they have like really giant mountains like Afghanistan, Pakistan. They're like mountainous deserts. But Italy, compared to these other ones, are very small, but they're a long nation. Also, they touch the Alps as well. It does get very hot in the south, and it can get very cold, obviously, in the north. As a Japanese guy, I'm offended. Where is my Oh, all right. Well, at least it was him that went there, not me. Italy, you okay there? Here are the two notes. Obviously, their coldest temperature, 2003 in the north. Of course, this place is also next to Austria. We saw them as a very cold nation too. And then their hottest, of course, just like I said, it's in the south, specifically in Sicily. India is just like, we can frick you up both ways. Yeah, I mean, you got the Himalayas in the north. It gets really hot in the south too, specifically like by the peninsula. Speaking of extremes though, nuclear energy is a mess in Europe. France is famously the country that has harnessed nuclear power the most in the world. However, a lot of those reactors were built all the way back in the 70s, 50 years ago. And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you've got Germany. It's crazy because these two countries border each other. All the reds show permanent shutdowns. There's only been 3 in France, yet there's been over 10, looks like 12 or more. Germany, man, what are you doing? Netherlands not much better. I mean, they have none. Mind you, the green and red are like one of the lesser concerns. I see just about nothing under construction. Where are the yellow? Oh, Russia's doing one in Kaliningrad. And it looks like that's literally it. That's all there is. Obviously, Ukraine has one. I shouldn't laugh, but this is a really funny red dot if you know the context. Just because it's categorized as permanently closed. Yeah, closed. You don't say. Should update this to like permanent meltdown. At least Germany's on the list. Italy went back to just being a great country without any of this. Slovakia is doing a good job considering their size. They're second, and then Ukraine. Funny to see a lot of the countries that were formerly a part of the Iron Curtain do so well in this category. Communist world was really going hard on this. Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought Germany had nothing left at this point. Apparently the UK have a couple that are under construction though. Obviously Europe tends to be the place talked about most when it comes to nuclear energy, but there's a ton going on in the US as well as East Asia, China, and Japan specifically. It seems to be the way a lot of the world's going. Just gotta watch out for those earthquake zones. Tesla is screwed, if that wasn't already obvious enough. Specifically in places that have a lot more competition in the EV market. Something to note about this too is because European gas prices are so high, they tend to be more bigger adopters of electric cars, so you don't see like giant gas guzzling trucks over there being driven around. This is just showing the differences in registration between January 2024 and January 2025. Over the course of 1 year, it's gone down by almost 50% in a lot of countries. More than 75% in Spain, though. I remember a couple years ago, Norway was like the top #1 country for Tesla. If things continue to go at this rate, that might not be the case anymore. I mean, just looking at the top 10 most registered new cars, I mean, there's not a Tesla in sight here. A lot of Volkswagen here, and then, you know, obviously a couple others. We'll see if this actually sustains itself because Tesla got off to such a fast start. These numbers are going to have to get way worse for them to actually drop out of #1. So I really could have used this map a year ago. This is all the no metro countries which do not operate a metro system. It feels like such a given when you're traveling around Europe, whether it's France or Italy or Germany or Spain. But there are a couple places I did go on this list, and I was surprised to find out, how am I going to get around? I'm not shocked by some of these small places like Luxembourg. I mean, it's tiny. They don't really need a metro. I mean, they maybe should probably get one, but it's considering how rich they are. And then other city-states, Liechtenstein, San Marino, Monaco. Well, I don't see, does the Vatican have a metro? I don't think so. The Vatican is only like a couple blue whales put together. They've got nothing in the former Yugoslavian nations, include Albania in there as well. Also nothing in Moldova or the Baltic brothers, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. But this is what got me. There was nothing in Slovakia. I didn't know what to expect in Bratislava. But even more surprisingly, there was nothing in Ireland. You don't got a metro in Ireland. I know you got those little cable car things, which I guess are kind of cool. It's better than nothing, I'll for sure say that. There was also a train I used, and apparently there's obviously lots of talks that Dublin will finally get a metro soon. Soon is a very relative term. But man, do I love me some metros. And this is coming from the non-metro guy. I mean, I'm an American. The hell is a metro? I mean, we got them, but man, do they suck. I mean, I'm actively told just to not ride the metro in LA. I mean, I would, but none of these lines go to me. These aren't even close to me. Regardless, do not feel bad, some of these European nations. We're kind of all in the same boat. The Riga metro was planned to be built during the Soviet era, as Riga was supposed to become a city with a population of over 1 million. So yeah, what hurt that side of the European continent was like the collapse of, you know, the Soviet Union and communism. Hello again, Yugoslavia. Yeah, it's important to remember that Yugoslavia was a neutral power in the whole Cold War thing. Then Albania sided with the Chinese, so that's the price they had to pay. No metro for you guys. No, I don't know. The fact that Russia has more than the USA here is insane to me. The US is at 10, but the Russians are at 16? This is the amount of cities countries have over 1 million population. There aren't even half as many Russians as there are Americans. And to make things worse for them, Russia's population is declining. All these facts, and yet the Russians still have a lot of people in their cities. Now, this map is really showing the geographical situation of a lot of these places. You wouldn't expect Russia to have more cities than the US, only considering Russia is is the biggest country in the world. They have twice as much land area as the US. Yet they're kind of forced to fit all their people in only small pockets. And this is obviously due to the climate of Russia. It is infamously very cold over here. I guess we should all be very surprised that a place like Canada is even able to get up 5 when they only have 40 million people. That's literally half of what the US has. And again, it all comes down to climate. A lot of the people do have to fit in cities because it's just freezing over this way. Those cities being Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, Ottawa, and Edmonton. It's funny because world maps can confuse you. For a lot of countries, you really just have to look at their population density. This is really all Canada is. This is the real Canada. It isn't just this giant nation that this world map projection makes it seem to be. So yeah, that 5 number they have is very surprising. That's half as much as the US, but the US has like 6 times the population. For a fellow North American country like Mexico, they have a different situation. It's not so much the climate, but that's more geography. They have to fit their people in large cities because they only have a couple of pockets where a lot of people can even live. You got a giant desert up this way and then just heavily mountainous terrain over here. Not to mention it's all tropical and foresty in the Yucatan Peninsula. Moving down to Brazil, there's about 200 million or over 200 million people that live in the entire country, but there's 17 cities with over a million population, and that is because most of the people just live along the coast. Europe is extremely spread out, as you can see, and that is due to their geography, their history. Turkey is a similar situation as Mexico. They are very mountainous, so they got to cram a lot of their people. And then finally, the 2 biggest nations on Earth, but there's quite the difference. So India has technically the most people, but they have half the amount of cities with over a million population. So that says to me the Indian population is a lot more spread out. China is also like relatively spread out, but there's no one that really lives here, and all the giant cities are mostly along the coast. This map is actually showing us so much. I mean, I have barely scratched the surface. I think a definition of city should be given here. Some countries do not distinguish between cities and towns. It's so impossible. I've talked about this so many times. Every country has a different definition for city. We're never going to be able to get it down. Funny enough, Australia is in a very similar situation as Canada, just on the other side of the globe and with even less population, but 5 cities with over a million population. Brazil, 3rd. Damn, we're very compacted. I mean, yeah, you got the giant Amazon rainforest and then all this mountain terrain here. Pretty much only going to be able to live near the coast when it comes to that. Kind of surprised the US only has 10 cities over a million population. I guess it has something to do with how defined cities versus metro areas are. According to Britannica, we only have 9 cities with over a million population. Austin, Jacksonville, San Jose just got left out. Oh, this stuff's constantly changing. That's the other issue. Man, does this map say a lot. Which type of restaurant is more popular? In blue, they are foreign cuisines, and in red, they are local cuisines. This should be surprising to nobody. Now, I would assume migration would probably make a slight impact, but then again, that's not always the case. I mean, France has a lot of immigrants, but they still have local cuisine as their #1. Poland, on the other hand, doesn't bring in a lot of new people, but they're still in the blue for foreign cuisine. Those restaurants are more popular. Is it surprising to see the UK on this list? No, I can't say I'm surprised. This map all basically comes down to another map I can think of. Basically, this culinary map of what is real food and what is not, except it is slightly Italian biased, as you can see. Man, I can't think of another map I've seen that just really shows Mediterranean supremacy. Honestly, screw a war between Western and Eastern Europe. I want to see a war between these red nations versus these blue nations. Good food versus not good food. That's essentially what we're saying here. No, I'm sure there's some more explanation behind why some of these countries are blue. Maybe they're more open to different types of cuisine. I mean, I like German food, Dutch food, Austrian food. Why the frick should I go to a restaurant and pay for traditional German food? For this, I just go to my grandma. That is a good point. But I'm sure a lot of those red nations also go to their grandma. I have local cuisine at home. So maybe there's just a cultural difference to some of the places that actually go out. Like, that does make a lot of sense. If I'm going to go out to a restaurant, I don't want something that I could have, had that grandma made. I'm going to want some, like, curry or something. I also wonder if some of it has to do with tourism. These are very, like, touristy places. Well, so is London, but it's still blue here. But when a lot of American tourists or Asian tourists come, they're going to want to try the local cuisine, especially from France and Italy. I bet money on the fact that if Donor were considered German, Germany would be red. I also wonder if some of the foreign cuisine is cheaper than, well, the local cuisine. That could be an aspect. For some reason, this area of the US is the only place actually having babies. Or at least they're far above the replacement rate at almost 3. Remember, to be at replacement, 1 man and 1 woman need to have 2 2 kids to replace them when they die. So you can literally see the geographical trend is a straight line that basically cuts through the half of the country. Families in these counties are having 3 kids usually. Now there are a couple of outliers, specifically this part of New Jersey and this area of New York, but the fertility rate is really high in the Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, and then for some reason specifically western Texas. Not so much in the Texas Triangle between Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, and to be honest, I can't even begin to try to explain this map. For sure, people in big cities tend to not like to have a lot of kids. It's hard to raise kids in a small apartment somewhere up in the building. But if you want a farmland, hell yeah, get 8 of them pumping out, put them on the field. This map went viral because this person asked, why is there a thin vertical strip of high fertility and why does it map so closely with the time zone boundary? That's an aspect I almost didn't even think about, but it is perfectly situated between mountain and central time zones. Also, why is this general fertility rate for 15 to 44-year-old women, it has to be multiplied by 29? Why 29? I don't understand why that's so oddly specific, but I've been able to explain a lot of maps I feel today. This I cannot though. Quite possibly it comes down to median household income. That is a very big thing. You kind of need money to raise kids. Wow, this map actually does a really good job of explaining the other one. There are several other explanations in terms of maps, but I don't even know. I mean, maybe it's a little bit of all this stuff. I don't know why we're linking to annual average wind, but I don't know. To me, I feel like money is not the only factor here. I mean, that is probably a big factor. That's gonna be one aspect to explain it here, but it can't be just that in my opinion. Here's another map that went viral this week. The percentage of Latinos that self-identify as white. That versus the verified statistic of white Latinos. How do you statistically verify that sort of thing though? Anyways, everyone's eyes are on Argentina. 84% of them think they're white, but this number on the right side says only 36% of them are. I mean, I've seen some pictures of some pretty white looking Argentinians though, I will say that. Now, did some of those escape during the 1940s from Germany to Argentina? Yep, some of them probably did. However, this area had a lot of German ancestry and especially Italian way before that too. Chile also pretty high, self-identifying as 71% white. Again, that's not the statistic that we see on the right side though. I'm having a little bit of trouble to believing this though. 64% of Brazilians identify as white. 64. There's got to be some crazy ones in there. I mean, you just got to Google Brazilian people and there's a whole lot of things going on. Okay, I don't know why this is specifically showing a lot of native people, but I literally just Googled Brazilian people. First of all, what even is white? It probably is a self-identification thing, but yeah, this says specifically in 2022, 43% of the population identifies that. What I find really funny though is the only place that is not saying they're white, but by verification, they are. Paraguay apparently is way whiter than they think. They don't want to be, clearly though. Central America seems to be like the only sane place on this map, pretty much kind of matching up with their verification numbers. This says, post this map if you want to hit the ego of a lot of people. That's what I'm wondering. How exactly do you verify this data? No, puppy. I'm Argentinian.
I know black. I know black. I know black. Impossible.
This could have something to do with the tube. And big ol' thanks to my April patrons. I time traveled back in 2025 to stop Drew from taking over the world. We only have 2 years left. Drew's Argentinian Trust Fund, Rip Grandpa. Alexander the Terrible. Carmel S. Connor Pavlik. DOOCHBAGGINS. Fredrik Tibblin. KingBearHaze. KirinoIsBestGirl. The Go. Nolan. NordTyrol. And Tambre.